Hello there again. This is and mic's in the wrong place. What I'm supposed to be doing now. So, getting on with number 44, I suppose, in this series, which was intended to continue on the subject of all the terrible things that can go wrong to you when you start going crazy with something like constructors. And in the meantime, I've been going crazy with something like constructors. But not constructors specifically, our little string class. And I've put that into a library object. And I need to explain to you what that is. In fact, there's a video uploaded, not intended to be part of the series, but just for me to reference, where I go through the process of creating this common lib. This is not a program. It's called a static library. That's why this changed from link to librarian. So it makes you feel like you're actually in a real library. And the resulting project extension is .lib. And normally our file extensions, after compiling, it doesn't matter. And it does matter. All of them produce these things called OBJ files, which are not so dissimilar from the OBJ files that we dealt with in assembler. This particular project has two, because there are in fact two source files, and so therefore there are two object files. If I wanted to, I could take this object file on its own without any modification and include it in another project. I could take both of them, but this one would be rejected because it includes a function called main, which every other project also includes, and that would be a conflict. But this one I'm free to do with what I choose. And now all a library is basically taking a bunch of these object files and gluing them together into one big file. And that file is in our regular output directory, common. In this case it's called common.lib. And you can't see the OBJ files here, but there will be at least exactly two, in fact. Common OBJ corresponding to this file, and TS I'm using is I'm going to put in front of all of our type names, meaning tutorial series string. There is a thing. What this process of adding a prefix to everything is called name spacing. But instead of introducing fancy keywords, why not just put a TS in front of everything? It has the same effect, except we have to do a little more typing. That's all. Now, since that thing is essentially an object, some object files, I wonder, well, I can try. Let's see. I'm going to open it. Go in there. I want to make sure to put this into binary. Binary. Okay, now let's see what's inside here. Okay, now most of this is going to be debug information because it's a debug build. And that's what all this stuff is. These are those mangled names that stand for something. This is all things to do with the layout of the... Oh, here we go. Now, here's common OBJ. So this must be the beginning of the common OBJ file. Now, let me see if I can locate that file. Six as a default. Now you see that? Here it is. It starts with a capital L. And then there's F and 3Q. There's no F in this one. L.F. But there's a 3Q and then a directive. A lot of it looks the same. It looks mostly the same. So the a little bit extra must have been added. L 3Q. Up to the top here. F looks like part of a number. In fact, this whole thing could be a number. 66014C could be a number. But I doubt it. That L is too coincidental. Maybe. Directives. Well, somewhere in here there ought to be code. Oh, here's the debug information for that particular file. And in the lib we should find the same thing, unless they've gathered it. Oh, there it is. All the same. And then it should go to TS string default. But it didn't, did it? Oh, these might not be. Oh, here's part of the name. Well, anyway. The point is that somehow or other, that OBJ file is included in that lib. And any more functions I add to this library will be included in the lib file. Now how does that link up with our test program, which I made a mess of? There are two ways to do it, and I'll just show you the simplest way first. One is using the project dependencies and selecting that project as a dependency to test. So, for instance, when I call this, here I've used a namespace. When I call this function, now it's taken me into the comment lib. And although it appears as though I'm still within, in fact I am, still within test1.exe, the code used to compile this part of my program was already compiled in this library, and it's doing a little debug thing. Oops, it's out there. And I added a little debug trace macro, which actually you might find this kind of interesting. Watch what happens when I step over this. See? It printed out what I said. I'm using these little direction arrow things, which can include numbers and strings. So I'm able to print this out like that. The file name was the function name was automatically included here in my macro. What's the macro? The macro uses this built-in macro called function. First it writes debug, colon, space, and then the function name, and a colon, and space, and then whatever your expression is you want, followed by a carriage return. And this is already built in, this part. Puts it in the output window. Now, why is that special? Well, for a number of reasons. This isn't really an error or warning of any sort, but in general, you might print out a little warning message somewhere, and after your program's finished running, that remains here in the output window. Although I can use it now or then. And when you double click on this, I can't double click here, but it takes you to the line. Here's another thing where I've traced something out, and just by clicking here, it takes you to the line. And the reason for that is because of this formatting. If you put file name followed by line number, it's able to, the output window is able to take you to a particular line. I do want to get to those other dangers to do with constructor. But before that, I just wanted to take note of where things are. Obviously, I've done a lot of work on this string class, and I want to go through all the little functions that I've added. I haven't added any new data, it's still just the length and the pointer. But a lot of this is new, some you saw. It's still essentially all built on the one function that we added. You remember a long time ago this was called append. Pretty much all of this is still based on that one single function. And that process, I guess you could call building on top of existing foundations. And you can see that quite a lot can be built on one working function that you can trust. We trust plus equals, and so we can make all sorts of things built on that foundation of trust. Okay, so now the next time I want to go through these easy functions, like property things, equals and length and so on, and then move on to some of these more advanced functions, extracting a substring, extracting from the right, extracting from the left, and then modifying, cutting bits out from front and back, and then finally in the end these variable argument type functions, which I've used to create a bunch, hopefully nearly a complete set of types of things that we would like to turn into strings or have a representation string-wise for. Okay? And then we can move on from there. I'm trying to think of a project that we can work on to use some of this stuff. And I think I've come up with something. Something that is always a pain, And so what our project could be would be to make the process that I'm thinking of less painful by using classes. Okay, so we'll see you then.